Well,
There
good
we're
evening
at.
and welcome to our virtual Committee of Adjustment meeting. Now on your
Just a
screen, yes.
second, Peter, I have to do a little intro before you get into yours. That's a new thing we have to do. So,
Okay.
sorry, I'll just quickly go over, confirm that we have all members in attendance tonight with the exception of Paul Babin and Somnath Sinha. For staff in attendance, we have James Barr, the Manager of Development Approvals, Jason Partridge, Planner, Ricardo Peggy, Planner, Tim Fisher, Planner, Stephen Chu, Senior Planner, and Lindsay Stamen, the Secretary Treasurer. We also have approximately 6 applicants and agents in attendance, and there are 2 members of the public in attendance. So with that, you may go ahead and do your introduction, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. So good evening and welcome to our virtual Committee of Adjustment meeting. Now on your screen, you'll see members of our Committee of Adjustment. Behind the scenes, we have many staff members with us who have worked hard to make the meeting possible. Our Secretary Treasurer is Lindsay Stamen, and you've already heard from our clerk, Derek O'Shea. They are hosting tonight's meeting and running the Zoom platform from behind the scenes, so you will hear them chime in from time to time. Now, the agenda and the schedules for this meeting have been posted on Dash on the city's website. And if you don't have those documents and you'd like to follow along, please feel free to access them now. So we have 5 agenda items this evening, and I'd like to share with you the format that I'll be using to navigate through each application. I'm going to start by introducing an application, and then I'll give each applicant or their agent an opportunity to add anything further. If you have nothing further to add, then simply say so. Next, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions of either the applicant or staff, and then I'll open the public portion of the meeting. At that time, I'll invite you to raise your virtual hand in Zoom if you have any questions or comments you wish to make in respect of an application. Now, if you have a question or you wish to make a comment, please don't expect an immediate answer. It's during the public portion of the meeting that we'll be recording your questions and comments, and only after I close the public portion will the questions and comments be addressed by either the applicant, their agent, or staff. I'm going to be calling 3 times for public comments before I close the public portion. Next, I'll invite the applicant or staff to address those public comments, after which I'll come back to the committee, ask them to make a motion, and then we'll ultimately deliberate on the application. At that point, if you're the applicant, you're free to leave the meeting. Then we just rinse and repeat. We repeat because I'll be using the same format for every application this evening. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Now, if you have a personal interest in any particular application and you'd like to receive written notice of tonight's decision, then please send an email with your name and address to our Secretary Treasurer, Lindsay Stamen. Her email address is lsthamann@cityofkingston.ca. So I'll now call on Derek, our clerk, to confirm quorum. Derek?
Chair, we do have quorum.
Thank you. So now I'll call the meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. and I'll refer you to the agenda. Committee members, can I call for a motion to approve the agenda, please? So moved by Blaine and seconded by Vincent.
And just confirming, Mr. Chair, that this motion includes adding the addendum to the agenda.
Yep, Blaine and Vincent, everybody received the addendums today? Okay, very good. Yes, thanks very much for that. So any discussion? All in favor, raise your physical hand. And that's unanimously carried. All right, so we now are down to confirmation of the minutes of the September the 20th meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review the minutes. Okay, so can I call for a motion to accept the minutes? So it's moved by Jordan and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand. And that would be unanimously carried. All right, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? No, I see all head shaking no, so that's good. We have no delegations and there are no requests for deferral. And furthermore, item number 7, there are no returning deferred items. So the first piece of new business we have is for an application for minor variance and consent, 3224 Creekford Road. Lindsay, can I please ask you to introduce this into the record?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our first application tonight is for minor variance and consent at 3224 Creekford Road. The file numbers associated with the application are D10-049-2020 and D13-052-2021. I will turn it over to Jason Partridge for a brief presentation on behalf of the city.
Great, thanks very much. Jason.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So this is a consent and minor variance application for 3224 Creekford Road. Next slide, please. Purpose and effect of the consent application is to sever off lands municipally known as 3224 Creekford Road to create a new parcel of land. The severed parcel is proposed to have an area of 1.02 hectares and will have approximately 61 meters of lot frontage along Creekford Road. The retained lot will have 21.47 hectares of land with 88.5 meters of frontage along Creekford Road. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to request relief from the minimum lot frontage of within an A2 zone of zoning bylaw 7626 from the required 100.6 meters to 88.5 meters for the severed land only. Next slide, please. So the minor variance is for bylaw 7626 lot frontage. The proposal is 88.5 meters and the requirement is 100.6 meters and the requested variance is 12.1 meters. Next slide, please. So 3224 is south of the 401 and north of the Creekford Road. It's kind of in the middle between the intersection of Westbrook Road and Creekford Road and Barrage Drive and Creekford Road. Next slide, please. So this is the site plan right here. So at the bottom is the severed lot, which would be 1.02 hectares of land. And the retained lot, which is in the hash mark, would be 21.47 hectares of land. Next slide, please. So the requested consent application maintains the general intent and purpose of both the City of Kingston official plan and zoning bylaw 7626. This proposal is under section 53(1) of the Planning Act. The consent application request does not require plan to subdivision and has regard for provisions of section 5124. Appropriate conditions are included in the conditions of consent as permitted under section 5312. The proposed minor variance application meets all four tests under subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, and the application is being recommended for approval subject to the proposed conditions. Approval of this application will create a new lot with a single family dwelling use on each lot. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jason. Okay, at this point, can I please call on the applicant and or their agent to identify yourself by name and to please state your address for the record?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my name is Jason Sands. Here on behalf of the Boulevard Group before you this evening as it relates to this file, 3224 Creekford Road.
Good. Do you have anything further you wish to add to the application?
Just briefly, I'd just like to thank Mr. Partridge and staff for the report. It's comprehensive. In short, the single family dwelling that's on the existing parcel is proposed to be severed off on that proposed 1 hectare severed parcel, while the retained lot would be vacant, approximately 50 acres in size, and future developed with a single family dwelling. We've reviewed both conditions before you this evening as it relates to the minor variance application and that of the consent application, and we have no objections or concerns with any of those included for consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of the owners if that would be helpful. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much. Okay, so committee members, do you have any questions for the agent or for staff? And I'm seeing none. Everybody's head is shaking no. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have anybody here with us this evening who wishes to speak to the application for 3224 Creekford Road? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. Again, I'll call for a second time. Do we have any members of the public or anybody in the gallery this evening who wishes to speak to the application for 3224 Creekford Road? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, do we have anybody with us this evening who wishes to speak to the application for 3224 Creekford Road? Please raise your virtual hand. And I see none. Oh, I see Vincent. You have a question or a point?
One of the people in the attendees is a phone number, so maybe they don't know the proper way to raise their hand.
That's a good point. Derek, do you know if that person is registered for this particular application?
I don't know if they've registered for this application, but I can advise if somebody wishes to raise their hand on the telephone, it would be pressing *9.
Okay, so if you are logged in through the telephone and you wish to raise your hand, press *9, and then we can log you into the meeting. And I'm not seeing a *9 unless it's a rotary dial, but no, I think we're good. Thanks for that, Vincent. So what I'm going to do is close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Somnath and seconded by Greg. Any discussion on this? No, I thought it was very straightforward, made a lot of sense. So I'll call for the vote. All in favor, raise your physical hand. And that is unanimously carried. Thanks very much. Okay, the next agenda item we have is number 8B, which is for 184 Bagot Street. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance, file number D13-053-2021 at 184 Bagot Street. Ricardo Peggy will give the presentation on behalf of the city for this application.
Great, thanks very much.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
I can just barely hear you, Ricardo.
Oh, excuse me. Is this okay?
Still kind of the same. I don't know if you can place your mic differently or...
Apologies. Is this any better?
It's a little better. Yep. Yep.
Okay. I'll try to be loud.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you. So the purpose and effect of this application is to allow for the next slide, please. Is to allow for the construction of a single unit dwelling on the vacant property while also complying with the constraints of the site-specific zone. Specifically, the applicant is proposing to vary the parking stall length, exterior wall height, and landscaped open space requirements. Next slide. The subject property is located at 184 Bagot Street in the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. It is about 70 meters south of Johnson Street. The property is designated as residential and currently developed as a parking lot. Next slide. It is subject to site-specific zone B303. Zone B303 in 2015 was amended to allow the following on each property: a single unit dwelling at 111 William Street, a doctor's office and dwelling unit at 180-182 Bagot Street, and the subject property at 184 Bagot was allowed a single unit dwelling. Parking for 180-182 Bagot was to be provided on 184, and in 2021, 180-182 was rezoned to B601 to allow the conversion of the doctor's office and dwelling to a 3-unit dwelling. So there's just a little bit of history. Next slide. For context, here is the Google Street View of the property. Next slide. Here's the proposed site plan for the property. The 2.5-story residence is located at the front of the property, similar to surrounding properties. 4 parking spots are located at the back of the property, accessed by a shared driveway with 194 Bagot Street to the north. Skip ahead, please. For more context, here's a rendering of the proposed dwelling with the existing neighboring properties. Next slide, please. So variance number 1 is for the length of the parking stalls, which are required to be 6 meters long, The reduction in length is to allow for vehicles to more easily exit the site. Next slide. The parking spots satisfy the requirements of Zone B303 to provide 4 parking spots, 3 of which are for 180, 182 Bagot Street. Next slide. Variance 2 is to increase the exterior wall height 0.2 meters above the 7-meter requirement. It is noted that the overall height of the building is within the building height requirement of 10.62 meters. Next slide. Variance 3 is to reduce the landscaped open space requirement from 30% of the lot down to 9.3% of the lot. The landscaped areas are highlighted in red here. So next slide. It is my recommendation to approve the minor variances as they maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. I note that there is one piece of public correspondence related to access that we received today. And I also note that the property is currently subject to a site plan control application for the construction of the house. Site plan control was required as the property is located in a designated heritage district. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Ricardo. And I just want to confirm, did all of the committee members receive that piece of correspondence? Okay, I see some heads nodding. Okay. So right now I'd like to call on the applicant to identify yourself by name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Sands on behalf of the Boulevard Group, here to speak for Mr. Donnell as it relates to 184 Bagot Street.
Great. And is there anything further you need to add to the application we've heard?
At this time, I'd like to thank Mr. Peggy for the overview and slides. It was very helpful and informative with respect to the 3 variances that are being requested this evening. In short and summary, the site-specific zoning on the adjacent parcels has caused some challenges with respect to adhering to zoning requirements on this parcel, 184 Bagot Street. And the fact that the use single-family dwelling has been longstanding as it relates to what has been proposed on the site. The variances, in our opinion, are appropriate. Most importantly, I'd like to point out the fact that heritage permit has already been received approval through Heritage Kingston as it relates to this infill project. I think that's noteworthy as it relates to an underutilized urban parcel that can be adequately infilled with a single family dwelling. The variance with respect to height, in my opinion, is somewhat overshadowed by the compliance of the overall building height being adhered to, as well as demonstrating consistency amongst the streetscape of Bagot with the adjacent 2.5 to 3-story buildings. As Mr. Peggy mentioned, site plan control is required and it's ongoing through the technical review process, and it's anticipated that that be concluded in the near future should approval be granted this evening, to ensure that the actual confines of the building are prescribed and registered on title to limit what may be developed on that site, given the single family dwelling use. Again, one further point, the piece of correspondence received this late today is related to the right-of-way, the rear of the property, in providing access to adjacent parcels. And through this application, I think you can see clearly in the slides presented that the proposal does not seek to adhere or inhibit access across that right-of-way. It's proposed to be maintained. So there would be no adverse effect on the neighboring property owners with respect to access. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks very much for that. So committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Sands? or of staff? Yeah, so Jordan.
Question for Mr. Sands. We're looking at the landscaped open space. Minimum requirement is 30%. Proposed here is 9.3%. So can you tell me how that is a minor variance? And, you know, in your experience, I know you've got a lot. Maybe you could shed some light on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a great question. Again, just to speak specifically to the number, the mathematical question, to say that a variance from 30 to 9 is substantial, or maybe not minor, from a strict mathematical perspective, could be fair. But when looking at the fulsome development on the property, with the uses that are being proposed and the uses in which, in our opinion, are long-standing. And when I say long-standing, when the site-specific zoning was done, dating back to 2015, again, redone in 2020, 2021, it was always envisioned that a single-family dwelling be proposed on this parcel as 184, as part of that greater corner lot development. And to that point, there was also a requirement that there'd be off-site parking for the greater density on the corner property. So off-site parking was required. The fact that the off-site parking is required to be accommodated on this parcel 184 is one that negates the ability to comply with that 30% landscaped open space requirement. So that's really one of the reasons, or the reason, in my opinion, that there's really an inability to demonstrate compatibility and conformity with that city provision. I could be somewhat off with my dates, but if I'm accurate, the site-specific zoning originally came into effect in 2015 for this parcel, and the 30% landscaped open space came into effect in 2017. So the landscaped open space really was an afterthought with respect to the overall development of this parcel, and should or would, or sorry, have the applicant constructed the single family dwelling in advance in that 2-year time frame, then it would have been recognized as legal non-conforming at 9% plus or minus. So again, not to say that the mathematical component of that variance is something to overlook, but I would mention or allude to the use as being appropriate, and that given the fact that the proposal is attempting to demonstrate its utmost conformance with that perspective. For example, reducing the parking stall depths allows for additional rear yard landscaped area, and ensuring that a footprint for a single family dwelling is appropriate, given the contextual examples of east, north and south, east and west of housing in the neighborhood. In our opinion, it does meet the 4 tests of the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Sands.
Thank you. And James, I see you have your hand up. Do you have something to add to that?
Thank you. For you, Mr. Chair, I do. I am unable to turn on my video at this time. It says I cannot start my video because it has been stopped. There we go. Excellent. I do just want to confirm that Mr. Sands is correct in his recollection that landscaped open space was only added to the zoning bylaw in 2017. So when the property was initially zoned in 2015, that was not a requirement. When the properties were rezoned well, I guess this property was not rezoned in 2020. The southern parcel was. The provisions were not amended for this northern parcel, so there was no reconsideration of that at that time. If you look at the merits of this project, in the staff report, it is identified that there is a very low landscaped open space already on this site because it is used as a parking lot. I think the landscaped open space is at 2 or 3%. So the increase of landscaped open space on this property is really a creature of the redevelopment of it. So we are seeing a positive net increase in the amount of landscaped open space being developed on this site, while still accommodating all of the required parking for both parcels, as well as new development, which intensifies our urban area while increasing the green and landscaped open space within the city.
Great, thanks very much. I see, Vincent, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so my question would be accessible parking spot. How easy would it be for, say, a accessible van to pull in and pull out without having to back out of the whole driveway? Is there enough room for it to maybe do a 3 or 4 point turn to easily go in and out of the spot?
It's a good question. Who would like to answer that, Jason or James?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did miss the beginning of that question. It was a little jargled, so I don't know if that was directed towards staff or the applicant, but I'd be happy to answer it if it's intended for staff.
That's for whoever would have the answer to it.
No, thank you. And it's a great question. This is an interesting property because in the site-specific zone, there is a requirement that an accessible parking space be provided for the doctor's office on the adjacent property. So at 180, 182 Bagot Street. But 182 Bagot Street was recently rezoned and no longer requires the office space to be developed. So there's no longer a requirement for an accessible parking space. And if you read the zoning bylaw for accessible parking spaces, triplexes, which is what's being developed next door, is not required to have an accessible parking space, much like a single detached dwelling or a semi-detached dwelling or a second residential unit. So no accessible parking spaces are proposed to be developed or required to be developed on this site. So it would only be anticipated that regular vehicle movements would be accommodated in that back portion because they actually do not have the room in order to meet the requirements of the accessible parking space in terms of width, as well as the accessible aisle that would be required next to it.
To supplement that, would a regular vehicle be able to go in and out easily out of that spot? It looks kind of tight. I was just curious if that was something that was tested or thought of when putting the spot there.
I could defer maybe to Mr. Sands for the long-term knowledge on the rezoning of this property, but it does meet all requirements of our zoning bylaw for aisle width and access. So I imagine there would be some flexibility. While it would be tight, it could accommodate vehicle movements. I don't know if Mr. Sands has anything to supplement my answer, but I defer to him.
No, I appreciate that. And through you, Mr. Chair, thanks, Mr. Barr. My comment specifically to that would be the proposed access aisle width, although it appears narrow, is 6.91 meters. And typically through, for example, commercial developments, strip plaza, et cetera, a 5.2 meter parking stall depth and or a 6 meter parking stall depth is augmented by a 6.0 meter wide access aisle to facilitate in and out movement in that area. So this proposal, from as it relates to greater developments that you typically see access aisles, and again, I'm drawing the parallels to sort of a commercial type development because of the lack of comparison in this area. It actually exceeds the width by 0.91, nearly an extra meter. So from site functionality perspective, there's confidence from the applicant that there would be maneuverability and access in and out of one of those 5.2 stalls back out. So there could be driving in and out of that site as opposed to forcing someone to reverse out of the entirety and back out onto Bagot Street.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members? Thanks for that, Jason. And James. Okay, I see none. So what I'll do is I'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 184 Bagot Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have anybody here this evening who wishes to speak to the application for 184 Bagot Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. I'll call one third and final time. Do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 184 Bagot Street? Please raise your virtual hand. And seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jordan and seconded by Blaine. Any discussion on this? Right, so I'll call for the vote. All in favor, raise your physical hand. And that's unanimously carried. Thanks very much. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is number 8C, which is an application for minor variance, 2649 6th Concession Road. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 2649 6th Concession Road. The file number is D13050-2021, and Jason Partridge is the planner assigned to this file.
Thanks very much. And Jason?
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is a minor variance application for 2649 6th Concession Road. Next slide, please. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to request relief from the requirements regarding the interior yard width and the rear yard depth setback to build an approximately 52 square meter accessory building within the rear yard of the property. The resulting new rear yard accessory building complies with all minimum front yard depth, height, landscape, open space requirements. Next slide, please. So there's two minor variances for this project. One is for the interior side width, and they're proposing 1.83 meters. And the requested variance is 2.67 meters. The second variance is for rear yard depth. They're proposing 1.83 meters, and the variance requested is 5.67 meters. Next slide, please. So 2649 6th.
Carry on, Jason.
Yeah, I was going to press continue. So the 2649 Highway 15 or 6th Concession Road is located at the near the intersection of Highway 15th and 6th Concession Road, and it's south at the southern portion of the road. Next slide, please. So this is a plot plan of the house. The road would be where the driveway is located on the bottom of the drawing. And the proposed accessory building or shed is located in the top left-hand corner. It's both six feet from the property line for the interior and rear yard setbacks. Next slide, please. The requested variance maintains the general intent and purpose of both the City of Kingston official plan and zoning bylaw 3274. The proposal is desirable and appropriate development or use of the land. Building construction, the requested variances are minor in nature. As such, the proposed application meets all four tests under subsection 45 of the Planning Act, and the application is being recommended for approval subject to the proposed conditions. Approval of this application will allow for the construction of a new accessory building within the rear yard of the property. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jason. Okay, so I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify themselves by name and address, please.
Tom Poffley at 2649 6th Concession Road.
Great, thanks very much, Mr. Poffley. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the application we've heard this evening?
No, I think Jason covered it all.
Okay, very good. So committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or for staff? And I'm seeing none, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us who wish to speak to the application for 2649 6th Concession Road? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have any members of the public with us this evening who wish to address or speak to the application for 2649 6th Concession Road? Please raise your virtual hand. And the third and final call is anybody with us this evening who wishes to speak to the application for 2649 6th Concession Road. Please raise your virtual hand. And seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Blaine and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion on this? No? So all in favor, raise your physical hand. And that's unanimously carried. Thanks very much. Okay, our next item on the agenda is number 8D, which is 39 Hampstead Heath. Lindsay, can I have you introduce this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 39 Hampstead Heath. The file number is D13054-2021, and the planner assigned to this application is Tim Fisher.
Great, thanks very much. And Tim?
Hello, through you there, Mr. Chair. So we have a minor variance application for 39 Hampstead Heath. The purpose and effect of the application: the applicant is proposing to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 7.5 meters to 6 meters to construct a attached garage at ground level and a partial second story above on the existing single detached dwelling. The additional living space and interior renovations will result in a total of 4 bedrooms and a master bedroom suite and a playroom, as per the proposed site plan elevations and the floor plans provided. Next slide. The property is designated residential in the official plan and zoned one family dwelling A1 zone in zoning bylaw 8499. The site is developed with a single detached dwelling, or a bungalow in this case, with a subgrade attached garage. The subject property is located in the Strathcona neighborhood. The site is adjacent to 1 and 2 story single detached dwellings to the north, south, and west. The site backs onto Strathcona Park, which is east of the site. And there's also a pathway leading from Hampstead Heath to the park, which is located along the northern lot line between the subject property and 33 Hampstead Heath. Next slide there, please. Requested variances. I just want to make one clarification here. Signage which was posted on the property originally had the minor variance requirement from 7.5 meters, and what was being proposed was 7.1, and the variance requested as 0.4. However, the proposed site plan was read incorrectly due to there was 2 lines that appeared to be possibly the property line. However, it was determined that the property line was actually the one that was set back further. So we had to amend the variance here. Therefore, the variance being sought tonight is the requirement is 7.5 meters. The proposed is 6 meters, and the variance requested is actually 1.5 meters. So the intent of the minimum front yard setback requirement actually has 2 functions. The first function is to provide a minimum setback for residential development, resulting in a uniform development and streetscape, while providing a landscape buffer between the street and the facade of the dwelling. The second function of the minimum front yard setback is actually to provide a surface parking space located entirely on the subject property, while complying with the minimum length of a parking space, which is also 6 meters. So the proposed 6 meter setback will be in keeping with the existing built form and their existing setbacks along Hampton Heath, and will not have any negative impacts on the streetscape. The proposed setback will also maintain the minimum length requirement for a parking space on the subject property within the driveway itself. Next slide. So as we could see here from the site plan, on the left we have the existing, and on the right is the proposed. They are proposing a 2-story addition and a vestibule for the front entry. I'd like to just make note that the vestibule actually complies with all requirements. So the requirement, or sorry, the variance requested is for the 2-story addition, which is for the garage in the 2nd story. So the variance is considered minor, as the dwelling and its addition will remain largely consistent with the built form and size of the properties in the immediate area, and specifically the adjacent residential properties. No adverse impacts on neighboring properties will result from the partial two-story addition to the west half of the existing structure. We can switch slides. So this is a proposed elevation of what the house could look like. The proposed addition will allow for a more functional residential unit by relocating basement bedrooms to the second story. Actually, we'll switch slides here. Here we go. So as you can see, the first story and second story. The 3 bedrooms within the second story and the 1 bedroom on the main story will provide above grade bedrooms for their children. And like I said, currently there are bedrooms in the basement for the children, and their intent is actually just to bring them upstairs and out of the basement. The master bedroom will also be maintained on the ground story here. The current subgrade garage results in drainage and also functionality issues. The proposed at-grade attached garage will be accessible for parking and address drainage issues to the dwelling. Direct access to the garage from the dwelling will be located within the proposed foyer, and the requested variance will maintain a surface parking space in front of the garage, which will comply with the minimum length of a parking space. The owner does propose to widen the existing driveway and its access from Hampstead Heath. Engineering services does require a entrance permit, which is one of the requirements or recommended for the committee. And also a building permit would also be required for the work there to be done, which is also a requirement being proposed. So the proposed addition to the single detached dwelling will ensure the ongoing use of the residential use and the occupants. As such, the variance is considered desirable and desirable for the appropriate use of the land. Next slide there, please. At this time, there are no written public comments or objections received to date, and I am unaware if there is anybody attending to speak to this. Next slide there, please. The recommendation, the requested variance maintains the general intent and purpose of both the City of Kingston official plan and zoning bylaw. The proposal is desirable and appropriate to development or use of the land, building, or structure, and the requested variance is minor in nature. It is my opinion that the approval of this application will permit the construction of an attached garage and partial second story addition to the single detached dwelling. And again, we recommend approval of this application. I will leave this in your hands.
Great. Thanks very much, Tim. So at this point, I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify themselves by name and address, please.
Hello, I'm Paul Purvis from NCP Homes, representing Selena Santos and Lucas King, the owners of the property.
Very good.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that report. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. So committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Purvis or for staff? No, I see all heads shaking no. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public here who wish to speak to the application for 39 Hampstead Heath? And I think I see the only 2 public attendees are the applicants, but I'll continue to call. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 39 Hampstead Heath? And finally, is anybody here this evening to speak to the application for 39 Hampstead Heath? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. Yeah, so moved by Vincent, seconded by Greg. And any discussion on this? None. So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thanks very much. Okay, and our final application this evening is number 8E, which is for 1079 Finch Street. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance, file number D13-051-2021 for 1079 Finch Street. Stephen Chu will give the presentation for this application.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to advise the chair or the committee that the applicant is unable to attend this meeting tonight. He is feeling unwell and has been unable to use his computer. He has read the report and is in support of it and has nothing to add. He feels that he's consulted with his neighbors and that they are in support of the application and asked that the committee proceed with the application in his absence. Is it okay if we proceed with the application?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, please do.
This is an application for 1079 Finch Street. It is a minor variance. And the purpose of the minor variance is to increase the maximum permitted deck size of a deck that is designed to be 1.2 meters above grade in the rear yard. The requested variance is to increase it from 30 square meters to 90 square meters, being an increase of 60 square meters in total. The effect of the variance would be to allow the owner to build a raised deck around a swimming pool. The swimming pool is a raised type and it's located on the rear backyard, which is on a slope. Next slide, please. This is the key map for the neighborhood. It's part of a plan of subdivision. I'd like to draw to the committee's attention that the lot in question is deeper than the lots on the opposite side of the street and the lots in general. Overall, this is one of the deepest lots in the subdivision, and it is approximately 10 meters deeper than a typical lot in the subdivision. Next slide, please. The actual minor variance requested is to section 525B, which limits the maximum maximum area of a deck above 1.5 meters above grade from 30 square meters to 90 square meters, being an increase of 60 square meters. Next slide, please. This is the site plan originally submitted with the application. The actual setbacks from the lot lines actually complies with the zoning bylaw. And as you can see, there's still 29 feet approximately from the deck to the rear lot line, and that there are still substantial side yards around the deck. Next slide, please. This is a updated or additional site plan provided by the applicant. The main difference here is that it shows the entire lot in context. So the front of the lot is on the lower left side, which is Finch Street. And as you can see, the house extends back from that area. And then the darkened hatched area is the proposed pool deck around the pool. And as you can see, there's a more detailed distance, the shortest distance to the rear lot lines or the back part of the lot is 27 feet and a bit, and more than 31 feet for the rest of it. You can see Collins Bay at the top right-hand corner, and it actually sort of has frontage on it, although technically it's not frontage onto it because there's actually a road allowance that would prevent the applicant from getting access to the to Collins Bay Road. It's not on this map, but I want to point out to the committee that from the top of the lot near Finch Street to the lower part of the lot near Collins Bay is a drop in elevation of approximately 2 meters. And most of that drop is in the latter half where the pool area is, which accounts for, a sloped area where it's kind of difficult to keep water in a pool. So therefore, they've raised it up and leveled it up to make a pool. Next slide, please. In response to the public consultation, there were replies from 2 properties. There was a voicemail from 1083 Finch, which was in support of the application, and also 2 emails from 1074 Finch, also in support of the application. There were no comments from the public in opposition or any other comments to the application. Next slide, please. The recommendation is that the requested variance maintains the general purpose and intent of the city's official plan and zoning bylaw. The proposed application or the proposed pool structure or deck structure and the requested minor variances are minor in nature. As such, it is recommended that the proposed application meets all 4 tests of subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, and the application is being recommended for approval subject to the attached conditions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks very much for that. So at this point, I'd normally call on the applicant. Do we have any other representative of the applicant who wishes to stand for this, Mr. Chu?
No, there wasn't anyone else.
All right, well, that's fine. So committee members, do you have any questions for staff, or if the applicant were here, a question for them? I see all heads shaking, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is anybody with us this evening who wishes to speak to the application for 1079 Finch Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. I see
Chair, there are currently no members in the public gallery.
No public. Okay, all right. So I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a decision. So moved by Blaine and seconded by Greg. Any discussion on this? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. All right, thanks very much. All right, so moving on with our agenda, there are no motions. We have no notices of motions, no pieces of other business listed here unless committee members, you wanted to bring something up. I don't see anything there. There's no correspondence. So the date of the next meeting is set for November the 15th at 5:30 p.m. So the only thing left as far as an order of business is a motion to adjourn. So moved by Somnath and seconded by Greg. And all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. So meeting adjourned at 6:22 p.m. Thanks very much, everybody. See you in 4 weeks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.